Welcome to Word Problem Wednesday. I'm your host and math coach, Latrell Jackson, and today in this math tutorial, we're going to be helping Tyler break down the cost of his car repairs by creating and solving a two-step equation. So if you're ready to get started, hit the thumbs up button and let's go. Okay, this is Word Problem Wednesday number 4, and there is Tyler's car in the shop. Let's see how we can help him. First, before we start any word problem, we always need to remind ourselves of the three-step word problem solving process, okay? So step 1 is RRTR, where this will help us to comprehend what we are reading in the word problem. Step 2 is the four-part scavenger hunt, and step 3 is solving with strategy and purpose, okay? So let's continue. All right, so RRTR in step 1 for reading comprehension, we're going to read first, then second, reread, then 3, think about it, and then 4, we're going to rewrite it. So let's get started by reading the question. So this says, Tyler paid $124 to get his car repaired. The total cost for the repairs was the sum of the amount paid for the parts and the amount paid for the labor. Tyler was charged $76 for parts and $32 per hour for labor. Find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, so we read it once. Let's read it again. And then think about it. So once more, Tyler paid $124 to get his car repaired. The total cost for the repairs was the sum of the amount paid for parts and the amount paid for labor. Tyler was charged $76 for parts and $32 per hour for labor. Find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, that's the second time we read it. If you want to read it another time, you can pause and read it again for yourself to get an understanding of what it's saying. But now we're going to think about it by just talking about the situation that's going on right now. So Tyler, he spent $124. That I wish I was paying $124 for car repair. But he spent $124 total to get his car repaired. And the total cost for the car repair, so the total cost is the same as $124. But this next sentence is breaking down what was included in the total cost, like what gave him that total amount. So it says the total cost for the repairs was the sum of the amount paid for parts and the amount paid for labor. Sum. What kind of word is sum? Yep, it's an addition word. And the amount paid for parts. So that's one thing. Parts. What does it mean by parts? So you need to get something repaired. Like say you're getting your brake pads changed, like I just did. So that is a part. That's a part of your car that needs to be replaced. Okay. So that's what it means by parts. And then another section of the total amount was paid for the amount paid for labor. Okay. What does it mean by labor? So that's the amount of time that the car repair person put into replacing replacing Tyler's brake pads. How long did it take him to do that? And he's paying for that time. Okay. So Tyler was charged $76 for parts. Total, all the parts cost $76. And $32 per hour for labor. Okay, $32 per hour. So for 1 hour, $32. For another hour, that's another $32. That's $64. Okay, so find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, That gives us some information of what we're going to be looking for, the amount of time it took to repair Tyler's car. All right, so we thought about it. Now let's try to rewrite this. So we're going to replace the numbers with blank spaces. Then we're going to rewrite it in our own words without the numbers. Draw a picture or diagram and replace the numbers. We are replacing the numbers with blank spaces because sometimes numbers can get in the way to you understanding what the question is asking you. So we're going to omit the numbers for now so that we can focus on the situation and then rewrite it, okay? Okay, so here's the problem again, but without the numbers. And let's read it again just to see what that sounds like. Tyler paid a certain amount of money to get his car repaired. The total cost for the repairs was the sum of the amount paid for parts and the amount paid for labor. Tyler was charged some number for parts and some number per hour for labor. Find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, so now we're going to rewrite the problem in our own words. Okay, so we have the original in the cyan color, and then in blue it says example of the problem in your own words. And you can rewrite this however you think sounds good to you, but this is a simple way that I broke down the question that sounds good to me and that I would think would sound good to you too. If you have rewritten this question in a different way, you can put it in the comments and I would like to read it. So go ahead and give it a try. So this is how I rewrote the original question. It says, Tyler paid a certain amount of money to get his car repaired. Okay. Tyler's total payment was made up of the cost of the new items replaced in his car and the cost of the time it took to replace those items. Tyler was charged a certain amount for parts and a certain amount for labor. Okay, so like we explained, the labor is the amount of time it took to fix that, to replace that part, to fix his car, and then the part is the item that was replaced. And then the last part says find the amount of time it took to repair Tyler's car. All right. So let me know if that is a little bit easier to understand. If not, you can let me know in the comments and maybe rewrite it in your own way. And I would like to read the way you like to understand this problem, okay? So let's draw a diagram, okay? Let's draw a picture of what we can use to help us understand what we're about to do, what this is saying and what we're about to do. Okay, so we know that the total amount he paid was a certain number, okay? And this certain number was broken down into two sections, remember? So the total payment was made up of the cost of the new items replaced in his car, and then also the time it took to replace those items. Sorry that my lines are very curvy. So this first section is, just going to put a couple dollar signs. This first section is the amount that it took, the cost of the new items. And the second section is the time it took to replace those items. Had to pay for that. Time taken to replace new items. Okay, so total cost broken down, or total payment broken down into two sections: cost of new items and time it took to replace those new items. Okay, So this is a pretty simple drawing to help us understand what we're going to be doing. And we can already see that we have to add these two quantities together to get to the total cost. Okay, so now that we have that visual of the total cost broken down into the sections, we can replace the numbers. And let's read it again with the numbers. Tyler paid $124 to get his car repaired. Tyler's total payment was made up of the cost of the new items replaced in his car and the cost of the time it took to replace those items. Tyler was charged $76 for parts and $32 per hour for labor. Find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, that was one more time. So now let's go on a scavenger hunt. We're going to be looking for 4 things in this scavenger hunt inside the word problem. Numbers, unknowns or variables, hidden operations, and separate steps. Okay, we're going to go through the word problem and highlight each part that we find with the corresponding color. All right, so what we're looking for, what we're on a hunt for now is numbers. And as you can see, all the numbers that were presented to us in the problem are highlighted. $124, which is the total amount paid, $76 paid for parts, and $32 paid per hour for labor. Next are unknowns. So what basically unknown is what we're trying to find out. And we're trying to find the amount of time it took to repair his car, okay? So time is really the unknown part of this question. So that's why that is highlighted in yellow. Then we have operations, okay? So these operations are hidden and disguised as words in the word problem. So as you see in green, we have total, made up of, and per. Now, let's take a look at the pre-algebraic translation guide, and some of these actually are on that list where you can actually see what these words will translate into in algebra, okay? So we got total, made up of, and per. Okay, so here's the pre-algebraic translation guide. And we're going to scroll down to the table and look for the word total, which is right here. Total is an addition word, okay? So let's look at the example. It says the total of his $5 and her money was an amount, right? They added those two items together, 5 plus M, okay? So total is an addition word. And we had sum of 2 and 8, meaning we're going to add them together, like this example here. And then let's look at the word together, okay? So together and both actually represent that part where it says made up of. So if it's made up of something, that means there's some things inside of it, right? So that means that the total amount of Tyler's cost was made up of the two different types of costs, the cost of the parts and the cost of the labor. So both of them together made up the total, and together I just said together. So that those are both addition words as well. The last word was per, and per is right here in the multiplication section. So per represents multiplication. Here's an example, 60 miles per hour. So that means for every hour, this person went 60 miles. And in Tyler's case, for every hour spent working on fixing his car, he was charged $32, okay? So at the end of the time spent working on Tyler's car, that number of hours will be multiplied by $32. Multiplication, 32 times hours, okay? So if you would like this pre-algebraic translation guide, you can click the link in the description of this video so you can download it for yourself. Now let's go back to the question. Oh, I forgot the other word we had. It was and. And is an addition word because you say something and then you say something else. So you add those two things together and you said all of that. And here you're adding the total parts, the cost of the parts plus the cost of the labor. So that and is a addition word. Now we're going to look at separate parts or separate steps. And this is going to help us to see the different things we need to do to get to the answer, okay? So I highlighted charged $76 for parts, okay? Because that's one part of what we need to do. And then $32 per hour for labor, okay? We just explained that per means multiplication. So that means we're going to have to do some multiplication or the opposite of it in order to find out how long it took to repair Tyler's car. So these two parts are steps that we have to take in order to solve the problem. Okay, so are you ready to solve? I'm ready to solve. If you're ready, put ready in the comments. And one more thing, pause here if you want to solve this problem on your own. What you can do is solve and then resume the video to see if, to compare your methods and answers with mine and see if you got the same answer. Okay, so step 3 is to solve with strategy and purpose. All right, so in that, we want to make sure we outline a strategy, we label our values and numbers, and then we double check our question to make sure we answered it. Lastly, we want to circle or box our answer so that we know that there it is, that's the answer, okay? So let's first outline a strategy. So first, what we want to do is label our unknown, okay? So our unknown is time, as we see down here, amount of time it took to repair his car, and our time is measured in hours. So we can say that H equals time it took to repair Tyler's car. So now that we have our unknown, and it's now a variable, H is a variable because it represents a number once we find it, we can use it in our strategy or outline. So we can actually use the picture we drew earlier in this process, but instead of using $signs, we can use actual numbers. Okay, so the total amount paid was $124, right? But that $124 was broken down to two different sections. The first was parts, which was $76, and the second which was measured or charged $32 per hour. We know we are adding these two together to get $124, okay? Now, how can we write this as a mathematical sentence? Well, we know that 124 is the total, okay? So that is on one side of the equation. $76 is part of the equation, and $32 times the hours is the other part, okay? So 76 plus 32 times H equals 124, and that is our equation. So we're solving for H, and you may be wondering, how are we going to do that? Well, solving for H means that we are isolating H on one side of the equation, okay? Let's think of it this way. H is holding a secret that he's only going to tell when one person is in the room. One person in the room means that we can write H like this. 1 times H equals something, okay? That one, that's that one person in the room, okay? We don't have that on that one side of the equation where H is. We have 76, we have 32, so we gotta do some work to get those people out of the room so that H can tell us what the secret is. How are we gonna do that? Well, I got an idea. What I like to do is use PEMDAS backwards. So what's PEMDAS? PEMDAS is the order of operations. Some people like to say BODMAS. Yeah, BODMAS. And that's a little bit different, but it's the same idea. The way I was taught is to remember the acronym PEMDAS as Please Excuse My Dear Aunt Sally. But that's not what PEMDAS stands for in real life. This is what PEMDAS stands for. So the P represents parentheses. E represents exponents. M represents multiplication. D is division. A is addition. And S is subtraction. Okay, so what I mean by using PEMDAS backwards is we're actually going to start at the bottom. So what you're used to probably is starting from the top because you have an expression that you want to simplify that doesn't have a variable, but just numbers, just constants. However, in this situation, we're going to start from the bottom because we do have a variable and it's not an expression, it is an equation, okay? So we're starting from the bottom with subtraction. Remember, we want to get everybody out of the room that H is in except for 1. So what we're going to ask ourselves is, do we see a subtraction sign and do we see a negative number? Because both of those represent subtracting. So looking at our equation, I don't see a subtraction sign and I don't see any negative numbers. So that means that we don't need to use subtraction to get people out of the room. That's not one of the methods we're going to use. All right, let's move up to addition. Do we see an addition sign and do we see positive numbers? Okay. Looking at the equation, I do see an addition sign. Do I see positive numbers? I do. So 76 is actually positive, even though we don't see a plus sign in front of it. That doesn't mean it's not positive. Now, if it was a negative number in front of it, that would mean it was negative. But since there's nothing in front of it, that means it's automatically positive. And the other positive number is 124. That's positive too. Okay, so now we need to use some strategy, some deductive thinking. Which one are we going to get rid of first? Which person are we going to get out of the room first? All right, well, let's first look at 124. 124 is not in the room. Why? Because everything that is in the room with H is on that side of the equation with it. So 124 is not even in the room. So we don't need to get rid of 124. So since we know we don't need to get rid of 124, let's look at the stuff that is in the room with H. So we have positive 76 and we have positive 32. So what are each of these, what are their relation to H? Well, 76 is being added to H because it's positive, and 32 is actually being multiplied to H. Even though it's positive, it's being multiplied to H. So we want to look at 76 as the target for using addition to get it out of the room because it's the only number that is actually being added to H, okay? So question is, how do we get it out of the room? Well, we use the opposite of addition. The opposite of addition is subtraction. We're going to subtract 76 from both sides of the equation, okay? 76 minus 76 is 0, and we bring down what's left. And then we do 124 minus 76. Now, I like to do a specific type of subtraction that I wasn't taught in school. Most of you probably not have been taught in school how to do subtraction this way. But when I learned it, I was like, I'm doing it that way every time. So what I like to do is to subtract actually from the left side first. And I'm subtracting the places instead of actual digits, okay? So I'm looking at the hundreds place and I'm going to subtract 100 from 0, 76 doesn't have a hundreds place, so the 0 is a place marker. So 100 minus 0, 100 is 100. Now we're moving over to the tens place, which we have 20 and 70. So we're doing 20 minus 70. 20 minus 70 is negative 50. Okay. And then we're moving over to the ones place, 4 minus 6. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. Okay. So now what we're going to do is subtract from the top down. 100 minus 50, that's 50. And 50 minus 2 is 48. There you go. So you can check with your calculator and see if that was correct, but 48 is the answer. Now let's bring down the rest. We got 0 plus 32h, and that's just going to be 32h. So 32h equals 48. All right, that's our simplified equation, and that shows that we got one person out of the room that h is in. All right, so we were able to use addition to get that 76 out of the room. Now let's check out division. So with division, we want to ask ourselves, do we see a division sign, or do we see a number being divided by another number? Okay, so that will look like a fraction. For instance, 2 divided by 5. Okay, that is a division sign. This line represents division, and that would answer the division situation. But guess what? We don't see that. So since we don't see division, we're going to cross that out because we're not using that as a tactic to get each by itself in that room. Okay, multiplication is next. Do we see multiplication? We do, right here between 32 and h. So since we see multiplication, that's the last person in the room, 32, we need to use the opposite of multiplication to get 32 out of the room, okay? So the opposite of multiplication is division. So we're going to divide by 32 now on both sides. We're taking him out of one room, putting him in the other room. So it's like, you ever watch those crime shows where there's people in the room, like the victim or the person who is a suspect, and they are telling somebody what happened to whatever situation they were in, and then there's people in the behind that mirror. It's like a mirror window where like you can see through it, but the person that's inside can't see out of it. So that's what we're doing. We're bringing 32 over to the other side of that mirror room. So now as we divide, we're going to do 32 divided by 32. And what is that? That is 1 times h. And then the other side, 48 divided by 32, is actually 1.5. Okay, so H said, okay, thank you for getting everybody out of the room. Now I'll tell you the answer. The answer is 1.5. We got 1 times h here, 1 times h. That's the same thing as h. And our h is equal to 1.5 hours. Cool. Okay, so we said that our h is equal to 1.5 hours. That is our hours is our units for the number that we have revealed. And let's look at these steps up here. Okay, so number 2 says label your numbers, which we did, hours. Number 3 says double check the question. Okay, so the question, let's just read it again just to make sure we got everything. It says Tyler paid $124 to get his car repaired. Tyler's total payment was made up of the cost of the new items replaced in his car and the cost of the time it took to replace those items. Tyler was charged $76 for parts and $32 per hour for labor. Find the amount of time it took to repair his car. Okay, so that was all we needed to do was find the amount of time. We found that it's 1.5 hours. Let's write it into a sentence, okay? It took 1.5 hours, or how else can we say 1.5 hours? That's like 1.5 hours, right? So 1 hour and a half hour. How many minutes are in a half hour? 30 minutes are in a half hour. So let's write, or 1 hour and 30 minutes to repair Tyler's car. Yay! And we can circle our answers. And we're done. Also, don't forget to download your pre-algebraic translation guide right in the description link down below. So thank you for joining me for today's Word Problem Wednesday, and I will see you next time. Bye.